Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Today is a very quick video with my 10 top tips for effective revision. If you're new to this channel, my name is Brian. I'm a doctor working in London. I studied medicine at the University of Cambridge and at Imperial College in London, where I also completed my PhD. I've also been a supervisor and a lecturer, so I would like to think I know a few things about effective revision. In this video, I'll be going through my 10 top tips for getting the most out of your revision. I managed to get all A stars at GCSE and 4 A stars at A level before I went on to study medicine at Cambridge University. Okay, you're probably very busy, so let's crack on with my first top tip. The first thing I would say is forget what other people are doing. It's very important that you revise in the way that works best for you. When you're revising, it's very easy to get caught up when you hear about one person saying they're spending 10, 12 hours in the library. Even if they are spending all that time in the library or all that time at a desk, it doesn't mean they're using their time productively. So my first top tip is forget what other people are doing. Everyone revises very differently in terms of the styles and how long they need to revise each day. Find out what works best for you. It is a good idea to get input from other people. That way you can learn about other revision techniques that might work well. For example, if a good friend of yours is doing mind maps, you might want to give that a go if you've never done it before. However, once you are sure that you are using the method that's right for you, don't get swayed by other people trying to convince you that a different method would work just because it works well for them. Tip number 2, make a timetable and stick to it. It's very easy for us to wake up in the morning and say that we're going to do X amount of work over how many hours. However, it's very different when you actually have it written down in front of you. It's much easier then to stick to it. Something that worked very well for me and has worked well for a lot of other people is using the Pomodoro method. The way that people use this technique varies. However, for most people, it involves working solidly for 20 to 30 minutes and then taking a 5 to 10 minute break in between. And then every 2 hours or so, taking a longer break of 15 minutes. There are a lot of free websites where you can find a timer to help you stick to the Pomodoro method. You can also adapt it, change it depending on what works well for you on that specific day. They're very easy to find. Just type in Pomodoro technique into Google and you'll be able to find a timer that you can adjust. Tip number 3 is organize your revision notes. It is very important to have your revision notes organized and ready so that they are available when you need them. Having them prepared before you start revising reduces the chances of you having sections where you've missed off. You might have revision notes from different areas, so some of it might be from your textbooks or from past papers or even revision books. So it's important to have all your revision notes together just so you don't miss anything off. The next thing I would say is find a study space that works for you, whether this be in your bedroom, in your living room, in a library, or even outdoors. Even though some people like to move around and revise in a different place every day, that can be quite stressful and also can be quite hit and miss. It's actually very good to have an area that you associate with revision so that when you go to that area, be that your living room or your study room if you were to have one, you go in, you sit down and automatically your brain will start clicking into revision mode. My next tip, tip number 5, is think positively. Positive thinking is absolute key. There's a lot of evidence out there that suggests that if you're thinking positively when you're working, you're more likely to be calmer, more focused, and therefore you're more likely to do well in your revision and in your exams. I know it's much easier said than done to think positively, but hopefully if you implement these 10 tips or as many of these tips as possible, you're then in an environment where it's much easier for you to think positively. Tip number 6 is have fun. It's very easy to get bogged down with revision, thinking that it's an endless amount of stuff that you need to do. But it's very important that you don't let revision take over your life. Spend time with friends, with your family, and doing things that you enjoy. It's important, however, that you don't overdo it. That brings me back to my earlier point about making a physical timetable. It means you're much more likely to stick to the time restraints that you've put down. Tip number 7, this is one that a lot of people neglect, but is very, very important. Make sure you get a good night's sleep. This is essential to making sure that your mind is well rested and calm for the next day of revision. Research has suggested that most of the retention and the actual learning happens when you are asleep. Researchers have compared the sleep deprivation that you see when people have spent too much time revising with actually being drunk. I can be fairly certain that you wouldn't revise drunk, and therefore it's very important that you aren't also sleep deprived. Tip number 8, make sure you exercise as well. It helps the circulation of blood, which is so important for you to retain information. You don't need to exercise for very long, just 15 minutes enough. As I said earlier, the Pomodoro method is a very good technique for revising. In this, you will have 15-minute breaks every 2 hours or so. Tip number 9 is get rid of all the distractions. Make sure you turn off that TV, turn off your phone or your email notifications. Again, this is easier said than done. Small things that can help is just making sure that your phone is out of sight, making sure that you don't have a TV in front of you. Something else that might work is turning the Wi-Fi off. This will only work really if you're using textbooks to revise and not using the internet. But what this does is it stops you from going online and getting distracted. Tip number 10, the last one, is don't depend on junk food when you're revising. As a doctor and a personal trainer, I know the importance of healthy eating, especially when you're revising. A healthy diet will help boost your concentration, help you focus, and ultimately help you learn better. Stay away from sugary foods. These will help in the short term by giving you a very short boost of sugar, but will ultimately make revision much more difficult later on when you get that sugar crash. One of my top tips for foods whilst you're revising is searching for foods with low glycemic index. The glycemic index, very simply, is how quickly a food can increase your blood sugar. Foods that are low on the glycemic index tend to release their sugars very slowly and steadily. These are good foods to have when you're revising because it means you have a sustainable amount of sugar in your body throughout the day. You should try to avoid foods with a high glycemic index. These increase your blood sugar very rapidly, but therefore also cause it to drop very quickly as well. It's very easy to find the glycemic index for a lot of foods. You can just give it a quick Google and you'll be able to find the information on there. That was a very quick run through of my 10 top tips for doing well in your exam revision. If you have any comments or any questions, put them in the comment section below. I'll be doing plenty more videos in the future about exam revision and studying at university. If you're interested in this content, then please subscribe to this channel. Finally, thank you so much for watching and for subscribing. I hope to see you next time.